live on all platforms. Let's go. Trying the Vigilante Diaries. Background. I wonder if there's any particular reason I can't mess with the audio. In the Vigilante Diaries, you won't always be able to make the decision you want. In different moments, your decision will be conditioned by both your previous choices in the game and the level of your statistics. Blah. All of them may have a negative or positive value, but negative will not always mean detrimental, just as positive will not always mean, well, I'm a slow reader. December 2nd, 1980. A night like any other.
Was definitely a rough one. Yeah. I should write about it.
Dylan Donovan. Don't know why I'm going that route. Chapter 0, the prologue. Nerve aggro, secrecy, physical thought, stability, accuracy. Right, left. Dad, mom. Father worked at the port. He was the president of the city's stevedores. Union chapter. Character not saying that my mother wasn't kind living. Tough fare. December 2nd. Any given night, I'm freezing my ass in here. I must have been out in the streets for 3 hours now, at the corner of 6th and Rollins, 2 blocks from where I grew up. I'm looking at the Irish pub window through my binoculars. Keen's. I used to come here when I was a kid. The owner had a particular Irish name. Kieran, or it's pronounced Kieran. Yeah, that's what I thought, Kieran. Kieran Keen as a kid. I always found his name hilarious. The 3 people I've been keeping an eye on for weeks are here today. Dominic Tanner, O'Toole, Carson, Bennett, and Alyssa Marchand. 3 cops, all dirty. Lieutenant Cesney tipped me off about them. They run some kind of under-the-radar unit, call themselves Stronghold. They began small, sticking up small state dealers, but somehow it snowballed into gun trafficking, blackmailing, protected witnesses, extortion. The Stronghold offers protection, they say. They believe they own the city. They have no remorse, and they hide behind their badges. It sickens me. That's why I've been patiently outside while I watch them getting hammered at Keen's. It's their weekly patrol, and I suspect it's where they'll split the money they make with Stronghold. The drunk cops in the Irish pub. What's up, Mast? What do you need? What's up, dude? What do you need help with? Fuck me, these guys are a living cliche. For God's sake. I could have gone after them one by one, but I need to send the message to all 3 of them at once. This Stronghold bullshit ends today. and they better acknowledge it. As I wait for the three cops to leave the pub, I do what I always do when I'm about to make a move. I mentally repeat the code to myself. It's something I put down in this journal even before the first night out. Guidelines, some principles, some red lines. The first red line was about lethality. How far was I willing to go to impose justice? Could I justify killing, even in self-defense, or defense of others? And how would that affect my life? I made a decision. And hold on here. You're playing a game while streaming, then your PC just randomly shut off, and now will only turn on for a split second before shutting off again. That does sound like something, turn on, turns back off again. I feel like I've heard of that kind of problem before, and, like, I feel like I've heard of like, what that could be. When did this happen? Alright, I'm gonna say wait an hour and turn on your computer again. If it lasts for longer than a second, that means you have an overheating issue. Because if this just happened a second ago, and it's willing to turn on closer to 10, okay. Because I know that can be a heating issue, but that's my current guess. Just taking a risk. We'll be a good vigilante. No, we'll be just the bad guys. I don't consider myself a cold-blooded killer, but that's the way things are. The rule applies only to the bad guys, though. No innocents, and law enforcement, no way. Law enforcement does include these stronghold guys. They've been out of the protect and serve business for a long time. Second red line was about privacy. What would I keep a normal life after this? Would I face the struggle on my own, or would I need help from someone else? And was my need for justice more important than my private life? I made a decision. I'll probably need some help. Oh, yeah. Sorry to hear that. I know that really sucks, especially with how new it is. My mission is too complicated to be carried out by one person. I need allies, honest, loyal, who believe in what I do. If someone wants to help me, I'm more than willing to accept it. The third red line was about my ideology. Why was I doing what I was doing? And what was the ultimate goal of my actions? Was I trying to set an example or open the eyes of society? I made a decision. Principles. America is no more. For order, society is crumbling. For equality, crime always hits the working class harder. For liberty, the system is rotten. I'm gonna say equality. Eat the rich. The target is clear. The tired, the poor, the huddled masses. The average citizens suffer while the powers that be let them rot in misery and corruption, safely watching from their ivory towers. I'm here to make the ordinary men and women... ordinary men and women... Wait. To help the... Okay, help and make we're in the same spot, just on top of each other. To make their lives better. I come from below. I keep that in mind every time I'm out in the streets. The three cops finish their last round and pay at the counter and leave. O'Toole and Bennett smoke outside, sheltering from the snow beneath the pub's marquee. Marquand waits patiently. She's the only non-smoker. I assess the situation. 2 of them are drunk as a skunk. That's good. But I'm sure 3 of them are armed. That's bad. I better act fast and take advantage of the element of surprise. In other words, 3 cops would mean big trouble, but that's why I've waited for this moment. I needed the 3 of them to be plastered. Still, I doubt dealing with Stronghold can be solved without violence. I hope my brass knuckles and combat knife will be ready, but I will always carry an unregistered 38 revolver just in case. I check the cylinder to make sure it's loaded. I'm ready. O'Toole and Bennett tossed their cigarette butts on the ground, and the 3 of them walked to where they parked their car, near 7th. I know the area. The shortest route is the alley behind Keen's. The perfect place for me to intercept them. I don't show up with a smoke bomb or hanging off a roof or any of that bullshit. I'd probably just break my neck if I did. Or just cover my face and turn the corner to block their way. I'm not a lunatic or madman. Those people make me sick, and I don't pretend to be America's public enemy number 1. But most of all, I don't want to get caught and I don't want to get caught and fried in the electric chair. That's why I don't want to be identified. That's why I cover my face with a mask, a hood and bandana, my own custom mask, a ski mask. My own custom mask. I needed something custom made. Safety first and foremost, but also something distinctive. I'm no craftsman, but with the time and perseverance, even the most inept can make something decent. All I needed was a field hockey mask reinforced with a metal frame covered with fiberglass and resin. Damn, that's a good mask. I couldn't help myself making it red. I know it's a little striking, but it looks menacing. As soon as I made my breathing vent, I knew I'd made the right choice. I had made the right choice. This was going to be my face. Corrupt cop Carson Bennett. Bennett, the tall one, is the first to notice me. He frowns. He's not sure what he sees what he's looking at. Hey, O'Toole, look, isn't that the masked guy? Asshole. He says and chuckles. He's really smashed. O'Toole looks me up and down and nods and says my name. That name. So we are already the vigilante. Doesn't mean anything to, oh. This tells us whether or not our story is interesting. Okay. I chose. I'll go with something very plain and say, I don't know, the Red Dead. When I began this, I knew I had to become a symbol. Every time they heard my name, I wanted them to know where there was someone cleaning up the streets. I wanted them to know the fear that honest citizens know. I'm here to do justice. I'm the Red Dead. Hey, you, Bennett laughs. The fuck you want? Markhand is silent. He's the least drunk of the three. O'Toole is the leader. Bennett is the mustache, but Markhand is the brains. I doubt. No doubt. I step forward. Stronghold is over today. We'll make it ambiguous. O'Toole is the first to talk. Who the hell do you think you're talking to? You think we're afraid of some weirdo in a costume? He says as he advances towards me. He still doesn't take me seriously, but hearing Stronghold has definitely upset him. Bennett, the tall one, is still behind him. He smiles with a stupid look on his face. He's fucking drunk. Markhand just looks at me. She's the one who worries me the most. Then O'Toole pulls out a knife. I see the gleam of the blade out of the corner of my eye. Looks brand new. All right, now I get the Tanner nickname. Not sure I get that. You're not even worth wasting a fucking bullet on, you dumbass. I didn't expect this, but a knife is always better than a gun. They definitely don't take me seriously. That's good. I won't solve this by talking, that's for sure. Pulling a knife to a gunfight. Something tells me that we're good with hand-to-hand. Situation is complicated. These three aren't going to take turns fighting me like this. Like, well, I thought we could at least do the first one, then probably take out the gun and shoot another one. Alright. We still gotta go for the guy with the knife. He's an old cop. He's intoxicated. He's used to threatening others, to scaring people with his Tanner routine. First time someone drew a knife on me, I wasn't even of legal age. And Ricky the Pimp was 2 heads taller than me and a few years older than me. O'Toole doesn't... Yeah, I had a feeling. Intimidate me at all. I slap him away with my left hand and use all my strength to punch him in the nose with my right. He takes 2 steps back and looks at me dazed. His mustache is stained at the bottom with nicotine and blood at the top. I've broken his nose for sure. Thank you, Brass Knuckle. Fuck! What the... And before he can finish his sentence, I throw a left to his chin. Tyrone Marks would be proud if he could see this. I do not get enough of these references. It's a knockout, but it's close. O'Toole goes down and ends up soaked in snow. I doubt he'll get back up. O'Toole remains on the ground. Bennett and Markhand are running at me. Kill the motherfucker. Kill him. The other side of the alley. Alright, this is where we gotta draw our gun, right? 2 are coming at me. Bennett's the first. He's big. Reaching into her coat. She's reaching into her coat. I would much rather shoot Markhand. I focus my fire on Alyssa Markhand. She's by far the most dangerous of the 3. I fire 3 times. First shot lost in the darkness of the alley. The second misses and hits Bennett in the right shoulder. Perfect. And we get her in the hip as he jumps off a ledge for cover. She fires back at me. I don't know what gun it is, but it's not her service weapon. She could kill me with it and no one would ask questions. Clever girl. And to top it off, she's an excellent shot, minus the fact that she missed a few shots, but she's also been hit in the hip. Help me, damn it, I need covering fire, she shouts at her companions. O'Toole has turned out to be a cowardly piece of shit. He's behind cover and afraid to show his face. I guess he's more used to scaring the shit out of innocent people. Bennett is on the ground. I fire 2 more shots. She fires 2 more shots. And then there's complete silence in the alley. I only have a few minutes before I hear police sirens. Listen to me, fuckers, I yell from the cover. If I hear another word about Stronghold, if you take just another single dollar from an honest business, or threaten a working family again, I'll come back and I'll kill all 3 of you. Do you understand me? Silence. I don't know if the message got through or not. I don't care. I can't waste any more time here. I gotta leave before the police catches me. That's the saying. Oh, this is. Ooh. I feel like this is gonna come back to bite us. Less secrecy. But we've got a lot of stats up now.
Masked vigilante terrorizes city streets. 3 police officers attacked. The Observer headline. Morning edition. Next to a composite sketch. Well, whoever drew it managed to get a pretty accurate description of my outfit. I've been sloppy. I gotta be more careful. Yeah, the terrorizes thing wasn't exactly what I was expecting. But I wasn't expecting high praises for what I do either. I should use that to my advantage, in any case. Terrorizes. So, I guess, this city is afraid of me.
Interesting. An out-of-the-blue story, the Vigilante Diaries. This is already a really curious way to tell a story. Year 0, May 3rd. Hey, my birthday! There was a sociological profile in the article. Some things were just pure bullshit. But I have to say, some of the other things were spot on. Working class citizen, an extremely reserved person, probably a war veteran, either Korea or Vietnam. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much me. But I'm not just that. I was born in 1952, years after World War II. That's really I grew up on stories of the American soldiers liberating Europe from the Nazis and the Uncle Sam posters. The Times Square kissing picture, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, and all that. I guess all those glorified war stories have something to do with what I do now. Of course, then came Korea, and after that, Vietnam. Spending 13 months in Hue and Saigon probably also have something to do with that as well. Anyway, I was born in a working class family. I wouldn't say we were poor as church mice, but we weren't exactly well-heeled either. I grew up in a hole in the wall on the 3rd floor of 19 Monroe Avenue at the intersection of Benson and 10th. Men coming home with sore backs after an endless day of work. Women keeping order in a tiny 600 square feet apartment, in apartments full of children where there was never any silence. Children wearing hand-me-downs from their older siblings. Tobacco smoke filling the living rooms. And a black and white television set in some houses. A radio in all of them. Electric radiators in the winter, children cooling off with the fire hydrants in summer, peanut butter sandwiches in McKinley Park. That was considered a happy childhood in the 1950s. My dad worked at the docks, another working class hero. As far as I can tell, and despite having hardly any education, he was a well-read guy. Beyond the Western dime novels, I mean. He even read Steinbeck when he was in France during the war. I guess the Grapes of Wrath had a lot to do with him being president of the city's stevedores union chapter. If you have a problem with your boss, talk to Frank Donovan, they used to say. Mom didn't look anything like a poster housewife of the 1950s. First of all, because she wasn't a housewife, no matter how much my father insisted she quit her job. Esther Donovan is not a kept woman, she always replied. So she served tables at Angelo's Steakhouse and a restaurant just north of past of the interstate towards Greenville. All the neighbors and Esther wore their pants on in Donovan's house, and they were right. Mom was quite the character, and not saying she wasn't sweet and loving, but overall, she was tough as nails and was wise as King Solomon. And then there was my older brother, Paul. He was 1 year older than me, but we all looked almost like twins. 2 peas in a pod. A brother at that age means everything: a friend, a confidant, a playmate, and sometimes a rival, someone to fight with over who gets the last piece of mom's cherry pie, or the other trifle. We collect trading cards together, we played ball together, we watched Lone Ranger together, read Dad's comics together. We were always together. And then there was me, Dylan Donovan. I worry about writing my full name here in case someone finds and reads this journal. It's an absurd worry. If someone finds this journal, it's because they've caught me. And there's much more worse things in my hideout. So I believe that I am the protagonist of this story. An average Joe, no remarkable traits, except for one. My dad's principles, my mom's serenity, my brother's recklessness. Mom's serenity. Esther Donovan, as a good card player, was used to studying situations well and reading the environment. It wasn't easy, but she knew how to deal with each of us and rarely used direct confrontation. I learned a lot about how my mother managed our home. She protected us and kept order, just like me on the streets. Go. There it is. Esther Donovan. My mother didn't look like the poster card housewife in the 50s. We read that already. Donovan boys. One of my earliest memories is visiting my father at the port. I still remember the smell, a mix of sea salt, fuel, sweat, and smoke. A busy place, almost all day long. And noisy as fuck, too. If it wasn't stevedores and sailors screaming at each other, it was the sound of mechanical cranes and squawking of seagulls. At the time, I didn't understand exactly what my father did for a living. I was too young to know what a union president was. All I knew was that he worked at a port, and he didn't load cargo, run a ship, or operate cranes. I just knew he spent all day in an office on the docks, which he called the shithouse. That was Frank Donovan at his best, subtlety. Subtlety was never a strong suit. The shithouse became another playground for my brother and me. We spent hours in that place, as if it was our own house. For my father, it was the headquarters from where he fought for the rights of dock workers alongside his union buddies, Donovan's boys they called them. But there were some things my father couldn't take care of from the inside. The shithouse, especially when there were problems with the shipping companies. At the time, the shipping companies had established what was known as an open shop. In other words, free hiring of workers, being not non-union for longshoremen. For a longshoreman meant being a non-union for a longshoreman meant that there was no wage regulation, no control over time, and no paid leave. Fuck. That's why Dad had been on the picket line for his boys for several days to paralyze the city port. Damn. How far am I into the game? Pretty fresh. I've only done one chapter. We are now in a flashback at this moment. It's just another cleverly designed game. Without dock workers, the port was as useless as a fishnet condom. The city was losing money hand over fist. Even so, the negotiations had gone awry several times already. Shipping companies were desperate, but Dad was used to dealing with tougher, meaner, and more dangerous people. And even those guys always said that Frank Donovan was a stubborn Irish bastard. Yeah, they were right. However, my mother wasn't pleased with the situation either. She took my brother and me to the port to see him one Friday afternoon. I must have been 4 or 5 at the time. The situation we found there was not what we'd expected. Things were heating up. On one side of the picket line, Donovan's boys. The other side, the cops. I saw Dad yelling like a maniac. He flipped the bird at the cops at least twice. My father saw us arriving and ran over to us. He was sweating and looked agitated. Esther, why did you bring the kids here? Damn it, there! Dad lowered his voice. I heard what he said, but I didn't understand a word anyway. Those fuckers are threatening to call in the National Guard if we don't disband immediately. Then disband, my brother replied. These kids haven't seen their father in 8 days, Frank. You have a family outside the port, too. I know. That's why I'm doing this, Esther. Please take the kids home, and we'll talk later, please. I interrupted them. I heeded Dad's words. I tried to convince Dad. I tried to act brave. I feel like he would try to act brave. My father laughed and mussed my hair. He found it hilarious that a whippersnapper no taller than 3 feet from the ground was already as stubborn as he was. You're cut from the same cloth as your father, Dylan. You know that? Mom sighed. Just a few seconds later, Paul pointed at the picket line. Mom, Dad, look! And then the police charged. The screams of the longshoremen drowned out everything else. There was no time for anything else. My father threw a bunch of keys at my mother. To the shit house! Get in there with the kids and lock the door. He shouted as he ran towards the now breached picket line. And don't come out to you hear me? We lost sight of Dad in the turmoil. We just heard him screaming. You motherfuckers, leave us alone! He's gonna die. As young as my brother and I were, we couldn't take our eyes off the scene. The police handled out thwacks left and right without mercy. Blows to the legs, to the arms, to the head, or directly to the face. It was brutal. A group of them fought back. They set fire to some of the machinery pieces, and a huge column of black smoke emerged in the middle of the dock. The whole city was going to know just what happened on the pier, and not just from the papers. Then when things calmed down, and almost an hour later after the incident, we left the shithouse. We walked along the port. It had been raised from the top to bottom. A police officer looked at us on our way out. He seemed so surprised to see a woman with 2 children that he didn't even question us. He just let us go. My father returned home at midnight. A Lincoln Continental brought him. The driver was a guy with a tiny mustache. The one in the front passenger seat, a guy with curly black hair and olive skin, took him to the door and shook his hand. I noticed Dad was visibly uncomfortable. We went inside and my brother and I hugged him as soon as he walked through the door. My mother did not. She just looked at him from the kitchen with a stern face and asked him, "Who was that?" "Just a friend. Just a friend. Told you didn't do anything fun in the car together."
Hooty, hooty, hoot, hoot.
Comics! Diary, actually. What's up, Mockingjay? We never spoke about the Doc incident again. Our stats. Okay, we're a little more impulsive now. Tomorrow's Mother's Day? For you it is. Tomorrow, the next day is Mother's Day for us. Wait, no, am I stupid? Nope, I'm right. Frank Donovan. Have a closer relationship now. Slightly less close relationship. Valorant stopped being fun, Jesus. My brother was a baseball nut. Oh, June 2nd, 1957. We never took off the Red Sox cap that Uncle Doug had brought back from Boston. He even had a bat signed by Sandy Koufax. I must admit that I didn't care much about baseball, except for the trading cards. I loved them. For our collection was amazing. We had all the stars of the era. Alkalane, Whitney Ford, Ray Bone, Mickey Mantle. They tried really hard to capture the piece of this time period. Should have Mother's Day. I will do just that. I am craving Mexican food right now. The taco truck hasn't been in town. It's been fucking, where have we been? It's like, I get it. We are the smallest town that you go to. You probably don't make the most money here, but damn it, I love your quesadillas. And I want to try their new birria tacos. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. In the presence of a native, I should at least pronounce it right. Where are you? Okay, I can't. Okay, it's taking too long to find. Oh, they are. It's definitely low effort, but it's so good. Especially since you told me about, like, just microwaving it. Simple. Haven't tried Marvel Rivals? I do want to try it. There are two guys that I've been talking to that love to play that game. I have been debating jumping into it sometime, which is nice because I always wanted to try Overwatch, and I never wanted to actually play Overwatch. I'm tired, I want to make something warm the next... Exactly. Some Sunday afternoons, we go to McKinley Park after church to trade leftover cards with the other kids. A melting pot of Irish, Greek, Puerto Rican, and Italian-American kids gathered and traded cards, shouting like crazy. Shouting like crazy, as if they were street vendors. Yes, my Twitch stream is the same as my TikTok. Usually we all respected the rules of the game. From time to time, you could find a clueless kid who didn't know his Roy Campanella card, who knew what his Roy Campanella card was worth, but that was considered fair game. But there were others who didn't respect the rules, like Tiny Theo. His name was Theodoros Macropolis. But someone had given that name because the kid was fucking huge, almost twice as big as the rest of the kids, both tall and wide. Tiny Theo was a shady character. We knew that because Paul had had some bad experiences with him, Every time someone did business with Tiny Theo, they learned a valuable lesson. Paul hated his guts. That's why we never traded cards with him. Tiny Theo was just a nuisance that most of us traders avoided. But not all the kids who came to McKinley Park on Sundays knew him. And this time it was Louis Aguirre's turn. He was one of the youngest kids there, not even 6 years old. But Tiny Theo didn't care about that. We saw Tiny Theo take a large deck from Louis's hand in exchange for a single card. Unless that was a limited edition signed Babe Ruth himself, that was foul play. Tiny Theo was walking away from Louis. The poor kid didn't even flinch. He just didn't quite get what had just happened with his deck. And then, without a word, Paul headed straight for Tiny Theo. I asked him what the hell he was doing. I'm going to get that kid's deck back. I joined my brother. Why can't we do that right now? Oh, we're not aggro enough. All right, I told him to help Louis. Why don't we just give some of our poor cards to some of our kids to that poor kid? I told him to stay out of it. Well, I'd much rather join, but we'll say we'll help him. And Paul, we won't be able to beat Tiny Theo in a fight, and we both knew it. I spoke slowly, waiting patiently while Tiny Theo was walking away. Just look at that poor kid, man. Louis Aguirre was now just realizing what had happened to him. We were seconds away from him bursting into tears. My brother thought about it for a second. While it was true that he wanted to teach Tiny Theo a lesson more than anything, he also felt sorry for Louis Aguirre. Yeah, you're right. Let's give some cards to Louis, but only spares, okay? We waited until we lost sight of Tiny Theo. We called over Louis, who came up to us with the blank stare of an abandoned puppy. Handed him a pack of spare cards we had, and Louis' face lit up. Oh, thank you so much, and then he left smiling from ear to ear. Paul looked at me. I know for a fact that he was mad about not beating up Tiny Theo, but felt good about helping the poor kid. You're a good guy, Dylan. Let's go home. Come on. We are sleuth. May 23rd, 1958. Playing in the big league. My mother loved to play cards twice a month. On Saturday nights when she was free at Agnello's, she would set up a game at home. That night, as we finished dinner, my mother spoke to me as we did the dishes. Dylan, are you up for a game tonight? It was the first time my mother had offered to play cards with me. I thought it was an exciting challenge, something for grown-ups. So I said yes without hesitation. But I'm warning you, this is the big league, she said as she finished placing the plates on the dish rack. Don't expect any special treatment just because you're the youngest, understood? I wouldn't have expected anything else from my mother. Esther Donovan never sugarcoated anything. For years it had just been her and my dad playing gin rummy. Blah. But Paul had recently joined the games, so they switched to classic rummy. No home rules. Mom explained the rules to me in just 5 minutes. You have to match 3 sets of or more cards, either 3 of a kind or straights from the same suit, like this. She spread out a 5, a 6, a 4, 5, and a 6 of spades on the table. This is called a meld. The first player who melds all of his cards goes out and wins the round. And then the other players have to add up to the points of the cards they have in their hand without a meld. Blah. Mom picked up all the cards and began shuffling them. Easy, isn't it? It seemed simple even for my young age. We gathered around the table. I had Paul on my left and my mother on my right. She began to deal the cards with some confidence and a smile on her face. My father picked them up with a certain laziness. I don't think Dad was enthusiastic about rummy, because he knew that playing with my mother meant losing. Paul and I, however, were very focused. There were a lot of variables to take into account, and we were inexperienced. We played a couple hands, and one after another, my mother went out. Sometimes she got rid of all of her cards. "I'm going rummy," she said. That meant double points for the rest of us. She was giving us the beating of our lives. Mom knew the three of us like the back of her hand, and the game proved it. "You have to pay attention to the cards, boys. Are you paying attention?" "I don't think so," she said so teasingly. Paul was fuming. My father rolled his eyes, fed up with so much defeat. "Esther, darling, you're such a sore winner," he said as I picked up the next card. "Well, I'm sorry," my mother smirked as she put down the last trio of cards she had left in her hand, "because I think Esther Donovan has won again." Ooh. I focused on Mom's game. I noticed my mother's expression as I was dealing. I noticed how she would sometimes frown slightly when she received a card. It was almost imperceivable. Paul and my father hadn't noticed. But I had, and that frown had meant something. My hand wasn't so bad. I had a pair of deuces, 3 sevens, hearts, diamonds, and spades, already melted, a pair of jacks, and some high cards that didn't match. But I had decent hands before, and Mom always managed to lay out first. Probably because I hadn't been paying attention to what she was playing. I had to meld my hand without laying off anything that might suit her. So I tried to keep looking at her face while she played. I was melding my cards. I tried to pull out one of those frowns but I tried to pull out one of those frowns from my mom with my layoffs. Every time she did it, it was like a small victory for me. The game went on until Paul announced what seemed like the greatest accomplishment of his short life. "I'm going out. Yes, finally." Considering where we were coming from, that wasn't so bad. My mother gave me a knowing look. She knew what I was trying to do, but she was a skilled player. Mom had almost everything melded except for 1 ace and deuce, only 3 points left. "Almost," she said, and stood up filled with pride. "Better luck next time, son." She ruffled my hair and went to the kitchen to get something to drink. It took me a while to understand what that rummy game had meant to my mother, why she was so happy. Games aside, it was the first time she saw her younger son adapt and fight back, even if it hadn't worked out in the end. I think my mother was proud to see me standing on my own 2 feet. No changes. June 6th, 1958. Chrissy. I have memories of many firsts, but not the first time I saw Chrissy. For me, Chrissy Meehan was always there, like my parents or Paul. A childhood friend who lived 2 streets over, the daughter of one of my mother's best friends, and the officer of Gordon Meehan. The Meehans were Irish and Catholic like us, and we went to the same church. Chrissy and I endured Father Matthew's sermons patiently, waiting for Mass to be over so we could get out and play. Meehan was a cop back in the time. Back in the time when it meant being loved and respected by the whole neighborhood. One Saturday before lunch, Chrissy came to my block. "Dylan, you coming out to play?" She always called me from the street. Although she did like boy stuff, like hide and seek and other things, playing with Chrissy didn't strictly mean playing. Sometimes we just talked, and at that time, I was grateful to have someone to talk to. We went for a stroll around the block. A stop by Bob's store and maybe pop over to Kieran Keen's bar for a milkshake. Back when Keen served milkshakes. What do you want to be when you grow up? She asked abruptly. I replied that I wanted to be anything but a longshoreman. Although some years had passed, the dock episode was still in my head. I'm going to be a police officer like my dad, she said proudly. But I don't picture her as a cop, and I told her. We're gonna go with it doesn't suit you. You're too smart to be a cop. I said it as if it were an obvious statement. What do you mean? Chrissy was the most intelligent person I knew. Her grades were superb. I told her that she was worth much more to be a judge or a scientist, cure a disease, or send rockets into space. She was destined to do something important. I even thought Chrissy had potential to be the first female president of the United States, but any dork could be a cop. That's not true. My father's smart. She still didn't get what I wanted to tell her. I'd never been good with words, and my limited vocabulary of an 8-year-old didn't help me either. I tried to explain that it wasn't true that Officer Mihan was no idiot, but he wasn't like Chrissy. People like Mihan, my dad, or me were streetwise. We read the circumstances, we dodged problems. Chrissy, however, was the kind of person who solved problems. She was analytical, thoughtful, sharp-tongued. Obviously, I didn't know any of these words at that age, but I think I managed to get through to her somehow. Well, I'm going to be a problem-solving police officer, whatever that means. We returned home after the walk. We said goodbye at her building's doorway, which was a couple of blocks before mine. Before going in, she stared at me a few moments, with a smile on her face. You're strange, Dylan, but I like you. And then she kissed my cheek. No changes here. But a little closer to Christine. Playing chopsticks. Wow. This is going to be such a dialogue-heavy game. The weekends went by until Sunday mornings. The biggest culprit was Father Matthew's sermons in church. Paul and I hated Mass, but we didn't dare to complain in front of Mom. She was devout. When I was little, Mass was daily. Now we barely comply with our obligations to the Lord. The way she put it, going to church sounded like some sort of heavenly tax to be paid. Yet my mother had a sweet and gentle view of religion. She spoke to us of a God who was infinitely good, who cared about us, who loved us and protected us. Mom's God meant love. Father Matthew's God had nothing to do with that. My brother always said that Father Matthew reminded him of the evil giant in Jack and the Beanstalk. He was a huge fella, almost 6 feet tall. The echo of his throaty voice resonated in the church as he delivered his tightly focused sermons on angels with flaming swords, painful sacrifices, divine punishment. His personal favorite was fire and brimstone. Falling on Sodom, not even God could find 10 righteous people in that city. The guy was enamored with the Old Testament. Both Paul and me hated Mass, but for different reasons. Paul was just bored, but I was terrified of Father Matthew's God. Under his weekly sermons about evil, righteousness, and justice, there was an idea that proudly defined his personality. Father Matthew believed we were all God's soldiers, and life was a never-ending battle of good against evil. Man, that is a harsh way to. That is just a. I can't ever imagine just living in such a way. One Sunday, Paul told me he had learned a game for tool in school. A game played with your fingers, only chopsticks. Wait, fingers only. No, handwritten. It's got to be handwritten. I'm going with a medium font size because the periods are just so small. It was quite fun and perfect for Mass. We followed the routine along with the rest of the churchgoers. We stood up, sat down, knelt, recited, gave each other a sign of peace. But I was always looking at how many fingers were extended on Paul's hand. We were so focused on the game that neither of us noticed Father Matthew's shooting glance. It was more than enough for him. Mass went by the blink of an eye. My brother won 3-2. I admitted defeat, but I also pointed out that he had more practice than me. Our parents stopped to talk with a group of neighbors at the church gate. Another Sunday morning ritual. One of them, an old lady, pinched my cheek and said, "Look at you, Dylan, how much you've grown. Do you know who I am?" I shrugged. Of course I didn't know who the old hag was. As we waited for our parents to finish talking with the unnamed old lady and her group, we saw Father Matthew approaching us. "Hello, Frank Esther. How's everything?" "May I talk with the boys in private? It'll only be a second." No. A priest in the 1960s represented the highest authority for the Catholic family. Many parents left their children in the care of the priests without a moment's hesitation. There's no need to say how much trauma and suffering this blind trust has caused. Fortunately for Paul and me, Father Matthew was not that kind of priest. But unfortunately for Paul and me, Father Matthew wasn't like Spencer Tracy's Father Flanagan in Boys Town either. He took us to the vestry next to the church. Paul and I followed him, terrified and silent, dealing with the unpleasant feeling in our guts, that mixture of shame for misbehaving and the fear of retaliation. Most of all, the fear of retaliation. As we entered, he led us into a small classroom. We knew her from the CCD classes. Paul and I followed. He signaled for us to sit down. Father Matthew closed the door after us, stood in front of the wooden teacher's table. "Do you know why you're here, boys?" "Did you really think I wouldn't notice that I would let you play games in God's house? The church deserves all of your respect and all of your attention, even more than your own home. And Mass is one of the..." Father Matthew stopped abruptly. Paul told me later that he hadn't said a word. Made a gesture or... Oh. And Mass stopped abruptly. Paul told me later that he hadn't said a word, made a gesture, or said anything at that moment. He just thought, oh, another boring sermon, but somehow Father Matthew knew what Paul was thinking. He pulled Paul's hair with his left hand violently and almost dragged him across the floor. "Am I boring you? You're the eldest, Paul. You have to set an example. Where's your judgment, boy?" He hollered like a madman. He raised his huge right fist above Paul's face. Ooh. I really don't like that I'm not aggressive. I took the blame. But we're saying it was my father's fault? He held his hand on the spot and turned his head to me. He let go of my brother. He told me that if he had to punish someone, it had to be. I told him that if he had to punish someone, it had to be. I said that I had learned a new game at school. Oh, so he's gonna fully... Okay. I want to impress my older brother. Okay. So that's what he says. He put his hand on my shoulders. I squinted my eyes in anticipation of the slap, but it never came. You have shown courage, and you have shown sincerity, Dylan. But most of all, you've shown fairness. And that's what matters most. You may go, boys. But don't you ever think of fooling around in the church again, okay? We nodded. A hair pulling was more than favorable balance considering how it might have turned out. Why did you say that? I shrugged. It was something I often did when I didn't know what to say. I just felt like doing it. It was stupid, he said, as he walked. But you saved my ass. I love you, little brother. No change. Oh. More sleuth. Okay. That's right. I hate that they write thug. They should be different. It should be a much different. Like, they should write that word differently. Turning point. This was 2 more years later. Fuck it. Up to this moment, I had nothing but an ordinary childhood. Humble, definitely. A little rough a little rough in sometimes, maybe, but certainly mostly happy. In a few years, I would go to a high school. I met a girl, have a job, get married, have 2.5 kids. And a house with a white picket fence and all that. Of course that never happened. Or... it's cut off there. Or it didn't happen the way I expected it. They spelled that... oh, that's a spelling error. Well, this is a demo. Or at least it didn't happen in the way I expected, at least. That my life went wrong had a lot to do with the most special person in my family. The one whom I felt most attached. The person at the time of my life. My mother. My father. My brother. Whoever I choose is going to die. We're gonna go father with this one. Or brother? Father. Frank Donovan was a survivor. He had never many resources, but had guts and was clever. And that was enough for him, without being a great public speaker or particularly skilled wordsmith. He was able to lead hundreds of people at the docks. He had principles. He stood up for those principles. He was a father and a role model. That's why his death tore me apart. Not only me, everyone loved Frank Donovan. I knew it. Knew it. But no matter how much your neighbors adored you, being the president of Stevedore's chapter was a high-risk profession in the 1960s. First, some thought Dad was a commie, I guess by the standards of the time he was. Others had him down as a dodgy individual who ran the port as he pleased. I guess there was some truth to that too. My father managed the longshoreman working hours. He made sure that if a dock worker put in an extra hour, that hour was paid. Dad always said that he had no problems in life except the foreman and drinking. Beyond the odd riot and occasional arrests, that had held true so far. If he was going to if he was going to stay up late at work, it was going to be up to my brother or me to bring him something to eat at the shit house. A pastrami sandwich, a beer, my father's healthy diet. And this time it was my turn. The way was quite long, but I found it entertaining. Nowadays it'd be crazy to send a 10-year-old across Park McKinley, but this were different times. I got to the port from a distance. I saw that he was talking to someone at the shit house. There was a Lincoln Continental parked outside the door, next to Dad's Plymouth Valiant, the same car that had brought him home after the altercation at the port. I took a peek inside the shit house. Dad was having a heated discussion with two guys. I had trouble making out the conversation from the outside. Dad mentioned something about lying to the cops. The other guys replied, You better not know. Wait. You better not know then, Dad said. No deal, to which the guys replied, This is going to happen again. That really got on Dad's nerves. I clearly made out the last thing he said because he screamed from the bottom of his lungs. Because he screamed from the bottom of his lungs. It's over. Do you hear me? It's over. Get the fuck out. The guys left the office and headed for the Lincoln. They hardly seemed upset by the discussion. I recognized the guy with the curly hair, olive skin, who gave me a look like he just dodged a dog turd in the street. Didn't we just deal with that guy in the first chapter? As soon as they left, I went to the shit house. My father lifted his head from the papers, startled. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw it was me. What are you doing here, Dylan? I showed him the paper bag with the sandwich and the beer. Oh, yes, thanks for the food, son. He kissed me on the forehead and walked me to the door. He looked worried. There was no need. What? There was no need. Now, I'm where I am. Wait. He looked worried. There was no need. Now, we're going home. Come on. He walked me to the door of the shit house. He was somewhere else. I had never seen my father like that before. I asked him if something was wrong. I don't know, son. I really don't know. I don't know if I screwed up. I tried to ask him again, but nothing came out. My father locked the shit house and we drove home together. He died next Monday morning. I got up at 5:30 a.m. He got up at 5:30 a.m. as he did every day. He went down the street on an empty stomach, as he did every day. He lit a cigarette, the breakfast as he called it, as he did every day, and he went to the Plymouth Valiant and parked a block away as he did every day. And while he was crossing the street, two guys approached him and fired 4 shots point-blank range. One of them hit the window of Kieran Keen's pub. Another one hit the church door. The other 2 killed him. The attackers took my father's wallet and ran off. I'd like to say they fled to a Lincoln Continental, but the assailants just ran down Boston Street. I was awakened by the screams down the street and my mother crying next door. I went to see my mother. I walked over to my parents' room. Mom was kneeling on the floor, teary-eyed. That was the first time I saw her cry. And something terrible must have happened to make Esther Donovan cry. Dylan, come here, please, sweetie. She hugged me. I started crying, not really knowing what was going on. She told me that everything was going to be okay over and over again. Paul came in after me, also surprised. Mom hugged him too, told us not to look out the window, no matter what. When the police showed up at my door half an hour later, my brother and I finally understood what had happened. And then the three of us had the worst day of our lives. According to the police, it had been a robbery gone wrong. 2 people, no names, John Doe and Richard Rowe. My mother held out stoically. She held back on saying that 6 o'clock in the morning seemed too early for petty muggers. Yeah. Dad always said that he had no problems in life except foreman and drinking, seeing how the neighborhood regarded him. I always believed he was right. He forgot about the mob, I guess. Our living room was never as full as it was at my father's wake. No room for a single soul. The whole neighborhood had come to pay Frank Donovan their respects. The Mihans, the Mrs. Molinaro, Joe Agnello, and his wife. My mother went through the ritual over and over again. She thanked every family who came, taking the food they'd bring. Paul and I just nodded when asked, sticking close to Mom in case she needed anything. Salvatore Marcusio. Or I think that'd be Marchusio. Then a group of people caught my attention. They were led by Sal Marchusio. Everybody said he was an expert import businessman. Behind him were 2 other guys I recognized immediately. They were the guys who argued with Dad at the port. The ones at the Lincoln in the Lincoln Continental. The one with the unibrow and the one with the olive skin. This is where I'm going to call it for now. I have been reading a lot. My voice is tired. I've been at this for over an hour. This is definitely a game that we're going to check out more when it gets closer to coming out. I definitely got to brush up on my reading stamina, though. All right. See you next time.